10 Arsenal players pulled out of international duty in the space of a week. Now, if you have been anywhere near football social media over the last few days, you already know exactly how that number has been used. Crisis, disaster, panic, and honestly, I get it. On the surface, that list looks alarming. But here is the thing, that number is doing a lot of work to hide something much more specific. And what it is hiding is actually the most important part of this entire story, because not all 10 of these situations are equal, not even close. And if you genuinely want to understand what Arsenal are facing right now, what is real, what is managed, and what actually needs watching, you need to stop looking at the number and start looking at the names underneath it. That is exactly what we are going to do today. I'm Amelia, this is Amelia Arsenal Update, and if this is your first time here, welcome. We do proper analysis on this channel. No hype, no panic, just honest football intelligence. If you find value in that, subscribe and drop a comment below. Tell me which of these situations concerns you most. I want to know where your head is at. Right, let us get into this properly. Before we go anywhere near the injury list itself, I want to give you a piece of context that most coverage this week has skipped entirely, because the framing of this story matters. Arsenal went into the international break having just lost the Carabao Cup final to Manchester City, so the timing of 10 players withdrawing from international duty immediately after that defeat gave certain sections of football media a very convenient storyline. Wounded Arsenal, crumbling Arsenal, Arsenal falling apart at exactly the wrong moment, and I understand why that narrative lands. It has emotional logic to it, but here is what that framing completely misses. Several of these situations did not begin during the international break. Martin Odegaard has been out for over a month with a knee injury. Jurriën Timber went into the break already managing an ankle problem. Mikel Merino had surgery in February. Bivretchi Eze picked up a calf injury on the 18th of March. These are not new problems that suddenly appeared after Wembley. The break simply made them all visible at the same time. And when you see 10 names listed together under the word injury, the brain reads that as 10 simultaneous catastrophes. It is not, but I completely understand why it feels that way. So let me do something that I think has been genuinely missing from the coverage this week. Let me actually separate these situations by their real level of concern. Because when you look at this list properly, it breaks into 3 completely different categories. And the moment you see those categories clearly, the entire story changes. Category 1, long-term confirmed absences. 2 players, Eberechi Eze and Mikel Merino. Eze, calf injury, out for approximately a month. Expected return around the 2nd of May against Fulham. Now, I want to stay on this for a second because I think the significance is being underplayed. Eze was signed for £67.5 million in the summer. He has been injured since the 17th of March. And what that means is that Arsenal have never truly seen this summer squad at full strength, not once in a meaningful April or May fixture. Think about that for a moment. The full version of the team Arteta built last summer has never existed in a high-stakes game. That is not a minor detail. We will come back to it. Merino, foot surgery in February, out for months. Arteta confirmed it directly. His words were, "It is a big blow. He offers something unique in the team. Merino is gone for the season." That is confirmed, that is documented, and we move on. Now, category 2, and this is where I need you to pay close attention, because this is the category that matters most and gets the least precise analysis. 3 names, no confirmed diagnosis, no confirmed return date. This is where the genuine uncertainty lives. Martin Zubimendi. Right knee discomfort. Spain confirmed his withdrawal but released no imaging results and no timeline. There are photographs circulating on social media of strapping on his right knee. Nobody at Arsenal has confirmed what that means. Nobody. Noni Madueke, left knee injury sustained during England's game against Uruguay, substituted before half-time. Photographed afterward, limping through the mix zone, wearing a knee brace. Thomas Tuchel described the challenge that caused it as on the edge. He then said on Monday that the assessment was slightly better than his feeling. Now, slightly better than his feeling with a knee brace on is not a clearance. That is a cautious update with no timeline attached. Read it carefully. Piero Hincapié. Ecuador confirmed he returned to Arsenal to begin his recovery process following medical tests. They did not say what the injury was. They did not say how long he would be out. Those 3 situations, Zubimendi, Madueke, Hincapié, no diagnosis, no timeline. Remember those 3 names. We are going to keep coming back to them. Category 3, players who withdrew as precautionary measures and are expected back this weekend or next week. Saka, Rice, Saliba, Gabriel, Odegaard, Timber, Trossard, 7 players. And this is important. For most of these 7, the evidence points toward managed withdrawal, not structural damage. Tuchel said it himself on Monday. Direct quote, Let us get the narrative straight. They wanted desperately to be involved, but it made no sense to take this risk. They were both in clear discomfort, end quote. That is a rival nation's manager going on record to defend Arsenal's medical decisions. Think about how unusual that is. Tuchel did not have to say that. He chose to, and what he is describing is a controlled situation, not a breakdown, not a crisis. Saliba, the French Football Federation, confirmed recurring pain in his left ankle, requiring a minimum 10 days of rest. That 10-day window expires before Southampton on Saturday. Precautionary, Gabriel. The Brazilian Football Federation confirmed knee discomfort after the Carabao Cup final, not structural, managed rest. Odegaard, Norway manager Ståle Solbakken, said his return to Arsenal action is within reach. His own national team manager telling the world he is close. That is an encouraging public signal. Timber, Trossard. Both withdrew with what appear to be minor managed issues. The Belgian FA described Trossard as continuing rehabilitation under optimal conditions. That is professional club language for a small problem being handled carefully. So when you actually separate the 10 names into those 3 categories, the picture changes completely. 2 confirmed long-term absences. 3 uncertain situations that genuinely need watching, and 7 players who, on current evidence, should be available. That is a very different headline from 10 Arsenal players in crisis. Right, now I want to get into something that I think is the most analytically important part of this entire conversation, and I want to ask you a question before I do. Why does it matter specifically that Zubimendi, Madueke and Hincapie are the uncertain 3? Why those 3 positions? Why not say Trossard being uncertain or Timber? Because the answer to that question tells you everything about the actual tactical risk Arsenal face, and it is a risk that the surface level injury coverage has completely missed. Here is what I mean. Arteta's system is built on specific player profiles in specific zones, high press, positional structure, quick vertical transitions. And when you map those 3 uncertain names onto that system, you notice a pattern that nobody is talking about. All 3 players occupy positions where Arsenal have no genuine like-for-like cover. Let me take Zubimendi first, because I think he is the most underappreciated name on this list. When Zubimendi was signed from Real Sociedad last summer, the logic was clear. Arteta already had Declan Rice, one of the best defensive midfielders in the Premier League. Aggressive, high-energy, press-triggering. What Rice did not always have alongside him was someone who could read space in advance, stay calm under pressure, and execute the vertical pass before the press arrived. That is Zubimendi's role, not just a ball player, a press resistance anchor, a scanning midfielder who sees danger before it materialises and moves the ball before the pressure lands. But here is what most people miss about that partnership. Zubimendi does not just help Arsenal in possession, he enables Rice to press more aggressively, because Rice knows the space behind him is covered. Without Zubimendi, Rice cannot press as freely. He has to remain slightly deeper, slightly more conservative, slightly less of a threat, which means Arsenal's entire pressing trigger changes. Not because Rice is absent, but because the player who makes Rice's aggression viable is absent. Think about that now against Sporting CP in the Champions League quarter-final first leg. On their pitch, with a crowd that will be extraordinarily loud, that pressing structure is not a secondary detail. It is how Arsenal impose themselves from the first minute. Christian Norgard will cover that role. And let me be genuinely fair about this. Norgard is an intelligent footballer. His performance at centre-back against Brugge showed adaptability and composure that most people were not expecting, but his passing range is shorter than Zubimendi's. His press resistance in tight central areas is not at the same level. Those differences will matter on Tuesday night. Now add Madueke. Madueke was signed to give Arsenal a genuine alternative on the right side. That right channel, Saka's channel, has been the most productive attacking corridor Arsenal have had this season. More progressive carries, more goal contributions, more danger created than anywhere else on the pitch. With Madueke uncertain and Saka managing discomfort, Arsenal's right flank enters this fixture block at reduced strength. Trossard can move right, but he is a left-footed inverted winger by profile. His best work comes from the left side. Asking him to operate on the right consistently is asking him to work against his natural game. And Hincapie. Without a confirmed diagnosis, it is harder to assess the tactical impact precisely, but he was signed as left-sided defensive cover, bringing pace and athletic ball carrying. If he is out for any meaningful period, Arsenal's depth on the left side of the defence becomes a question worth asking. Put those three uncertainties together and you have something that is more than just an injury list. You have a situation where the three players with no confirmed timeline each occupy a position that directly corresponds to a known weakness in Arsenal's available cover. That is the story that is not being told clearly enough. Now, I want to pause on something for a moment because there is an angle here that I have not seen reported anywhere, and it involves Piero Hincapié specifically. Hincapié arrived from Bayer Leverkusen on a loan-to-buy arrangement. The permanent option is reported to be in the region of £45 million. Arsenal have that decision ahead of them at the end of this season. Here is what I want you to think about. An undisclosed injury with no confirmed diagnosis and no confirmed timeline is not a trivial footnote in a £45 million decision. Arsenal's medical staff, their board and sporting director Andrea Berta will be looking at those test results with significant attention, not only to manage Hincapié's return to fitness, but to understand what they are potentially committing to financially. And Bayer Leverkusen will be watching too, because this involves their asset. I am not suggesting Arsenal will not trigger that option. What I am saying is the injury context around a player at the precise moment of a permanent decision is information that carries weight. And that conversation is entirely absent from mainstream coverage of this story. Right, let me give you my professional assessment, my honest verdict on where Arsenal actually stand, because I think there are two things to say here and they point in slightly different directions. First, Arsenal's Premier League position gives Arteta a flexibility that most managers facing this injury list would not have. 9 points clear at the top of the table. Next league game is Bournemouth on April the 11th. That cushion is real and it changes every decision he makes this week. It means Southampton on Saturday can be used strategic. Players can be managed. Minutes can be given to those who need sharpness. The FA Cup quarter-final matters, but it is not the game that defines the season. And the fact that Odegaard appears close to returning is genuinely significant. More significant than the public conversation is acknowledging. Odegaard is not just a quality footballer in Arsenal's squad. He is the player who controls their tempo, who links their lines, who creates the pocket passes that release both Saka and Gyökeres. Arsenal with Odegaard and Arsenal without Odegaard are measurably different tactical operations. His return does not just fill a position, it restores a function. And this second part is just as important. If Zubimendi misses the Sporting CP first leg, Arsenal do not simply lose a player, they lose a specific tactical dimension, a press-enabling function that has no equivalent replacement currently in the squad against a team that transitions quickly and exploits vertical space. That absence is not a detail. It is a structural problem that Arteta will have to account for in his preparation. That is my honest position. Manageable across most of this situation. One specific name in one specific position for one specific fixture that carries the weight of the entire Champions League campaign. Watch the Zubimendi update before Tuesday. That is the number that genuinely matters most in this entire conversation. Bigger picture now, because I want to make an argument that goes beyond the immediate injury list. This week is not just a fitness management challenge, it is revealing something about Arsenal's squad construction that will have direct consequences in the summer transfer window. Arsenal spent approximately £248 million in summer 2025. The highest net spend of any Premier League club in that window, and the investment was made almost entirely at the top level of the squad. Zubimendi, Gyökeres, Eze, Madueke, first choice quality, high ceiling additions. The logic was perfectly sound. The existing squad already had decent quality throughout the depth positions. The gap was at the top end. Upgrade the profiles at the highest level and you can compete at the highest level. The consequence of that strategy is what we are watching right now. When the ceiling players go down, the floor becomes visible, and in certain positions that floor is thinner than the combined fee total implies. Now, I want to be careful here because I am not being critical of the recruitment approach. I think it was logical, but every strategy has a trade-off, and the trade-off for maximising quality at the top end is reduced resilience when that top end is unavailable. What this injury cluster is effectively doing is writing Arsenal's summer 2026 recruitment brief in real time. A second ball-playing central midfielder who can genuinely cover Zubimendi's specific function, a right-wing option with real Premier League quality to sit behind Saka and Madueke. Those conversations are coming this summer. You can already see the outline of the gaps from where we are standing today. Forward look, 3 games, 8 days. Let me walk you through what to watch for each one. Saturday, April the 4th, Southampton, FA Cup quarter-final. Watch Arteta's team selection very carefully, not just for the names on the team sheet, for what those names tell you about the manager's read of his squad. If Saka, Rice and Odegaard all start, Arteta has decided that competitive match sharpness before Tuesday is more valuable than physical rest, or he is sending his key players into Southampton to get meaningful minutes in their legs ahead of Lisbon. If those players are heavily rotated and you see a significantly changed side, Arteta is protecting everything for Tuesday. He is treating Southampton as a carefully managed exercise and sporting CP as the real opening act. Either decision is defensible, but each one tells you something different about the psychological and physical state of the group right now. Tuesday, April the 7th, Sporting CP, Estadio José Alvalade, Champions League quarter-final first leg. And this is where we arrive at what I genuinely believe is the most compelling individual storyline in Arsenal's entire season, Victor Gyökeres. Gyökeres joined Arsenal from Sporting CP last summer for approximately £80 million. He spent 5 years at that club. He knows that stadium. He knows that crowd. He knows exactly what atmosphere is waiting for him when he walks out for the warm-up. And he arrives there as Arsenal's primary attacking force, potentially carrying an attack where Eze is absent for the season, Madueke is uncertain, and Saka is managing fitness concerns. That is an enormous individual responsibility, but I want to frame it the right way because that is not just pressure, that is an opportunity. If Gyökeres performs at the highest level in that environment with a short-handed support structure around him and Arsenal come back to London with a positive result, that performance becomes the defining moment of his first season in North London. For Arsenal collectively, it answers a question that this injury crisis has raised, but that only the pitch can resolve. Can this squad compete at the highest level when it is not whole? Friday, April the 11th, Bournemouth at the Emirates. By then, clarity on Zubimendi and Madueke should exist. And depending on what happened in Lisbon, Arsenal will either be riding positive momentum into a game that could extend their Premier League lead significantly, or navigating a different kind of psychological challenge. That is football. You cannot engineer the outcomes in advance. You can only understand the variables clearly enough to make the best possible decisions. Let me leave you with one final thought, because after everything we have covered today, I think there is one framing that captures this situation most honestly. The story everyone is reading this week is about the number 10. 10 injured players, 10 names, 10 reasons to worry or not worry, depending on your perspective. But the real story is about 3 unanswered questions. What exactly is wrong with Zubimendi's knee? When is Madueke genuinely fit? And what did Hincapie come home from Ecuador with? Everything else in this situation has an answer, or it has enough context to form a reasonable judgment. Those 3 questions do not have answers yet, and Arsenal face Southampton on Saturday, Sporting CP in Lisbon on Tuesday, and Bournemouth the following Friday. With those 3 questions still open, that is not a crisis. Arsenal have a 9-point lead, an experienced and intelligent manager, and several important players returning from situations that appear to be precautionary. The infrastructure is there, but here is the honest reality underneath all of it. The most complete version of this Arsenal squad, the team with Eze, Marino, Zubimendi, Madueke, and every summer signing available simultaneously, has never once played together in a high-stakes match. Not once. This group has never been whole in a game that truly matters. And the question that this injury list is forcing Arsenal to answer, not in press conferences, not in social media posts, but on 3 pitches over 8 days, is whether a squad that has never reached its own ceiling can still be good enough to compete for a Premier League title, a Champions League semi-final place, and potentially an FA Cup semi-final. That is the real test, not of Arteta's tactics alone, not of the transfer strategy in isolation, but of the depth of character inside that dressing room when the situation is imperfect and the stakes are at their highest. We are about to find out exactly what is there. That is everything from me today. If you found this useful, subscribe to Amelia Arsenal Update, leave a comment below. Tell me which of the 3 uncertain names concerns you most heading into this week. Zubimendi, Madueke or Hincapie. I genuinely want to know where you stand. I will be back before Southampton on Saturday with the full team news and tactical preview. Every confirmed name and what the selection tells us about Arteta's thinking going into Lisbon. Until then, take care.